Coming up, Kansas Representative Sharice Davids and attorney Trent Shores talk about the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act. Plus, Susan Masten empowers women leaders and crowd-pleasing performers. I am Aaliyah Chavez. Join us for those interviews, plus headlines from the ICT Newscast.
Arizona State University welcomes 3,500 Indigenous students from Arizona and across the nation. It serves one of the largest populations of Indigenous students among U.S. colleges and universities. We created a sense of place for tribal nations to create futures of their own making through community outreach and research, taught by world-class Indigenous faculty where they see a reflection of themselves and their experiences. Find community at ASU.
This is the ICT Newscast with Aaliyah Chavez.
Amadawa Hopa, thank you for joining us. Cherokee leadership are among many Indigenous leaders hailing the reauthorization of the Hallmark Violence Against Women Act. This week, President Joe Biden reauthorized the law that was first enacted in 1994. VAWA allows tribal nations to prosecute non-native perpetrators who commit domestic violence and other crimes against enrolled citizens on tribal lands. The legislation requires a renewal every 5 years, but it lapsed several years ago, largely due to partisan disagreements. Principal Chief of the Cherokee Nation, Chuck Hoskin Jr., spoke to ICT about what the legislation means.
Well, on a personal level, it means a great deal to me because I'm a husband, a father, and as principal chief, every day I think about whether we're doing all we can to protect people within our reservation, and to do that in an atmosphere or an environment in which we're constrained.
Hoskins says there are a range of criminal justice issues in Indian country that need to be worked on. People in the United States are now able to order another round of free rapid COVID-19 tests. Last week, the White House announced households who previously ordered the tests are now eligible for a reorder. To order online, you can visit the website covidtest.gov. To order by phone, you can call 1-800-232-0233. The number again is 1-800-232-0233. According to the United States Postal Service, the tests will be shipped as soon as they are received from manufacturing companies. Well, model, actress, and advocate Ashley Collingbull has her eyes set on a new goal, which is to make it into the swimsuit issue of Sports Illustrated magazine. Collingbull announced in a social media post last week that she is the first Indigenous woman to shoot for Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue. In 2015, Collingbull became the first Indigenous woman to win the title of Mrs. Universe. As a guest on the ICT Newscast in the fall, she spoke about using her platform to share issues affecting Indigenous people.
Well, for me, it was always important to be outspoken and speak my truth. And especially if I'm in a position where I have a platform, where I'm considered an ambassador, where I can actually use my voice, it's important for me to use it as much as possible because so many of our voices are silenced. I speak about so many issues like murdered or missing Indigenous women, our children who are in the foster care system, the environment, politics.
Collingbull joins 14 other Swim Search finalists who are competing to be a 2023 SI Swimsuit Rookie. The South by Southwest 2022 conference and its festivals are running now through March 20th, and one of the Indigenous films being shown is really standing out. ICT correspondent Karina Dominguez talked to some of the people behind the documentary Long Line of Ladies.
I wish I would have had a film like this growing up because it would have shaped a lot of how I thought about myself.
Ty sent the snap to our whole group chat and was like, guess who started her period? But then I was like, wait, this means that I'm gonna have my flower dance this year.
Long Line of Ladies captures a young Karuk girl's journey into womanhood and was an official selection at the South by Southwest Film Festival. Navajo filmmaker Shandine Tome worked alongside an Academy Award-winning director to tell the story.
Rika was really listening to me. I think being an Indigenous filmmaker, it's always like a lonely battle. Like you're fighting for yourself, you're fighting for the subjects.
Pim Tripp Allen was the tribe's cultural consultant for the production and talks about cultural revitalization in the film.
When they ask us, well, what was your flower dance like? And then you're like, well, I didn't have one. And then it's like, well, why?
Can you kind of give us some perspective on, why things kind of went dormant and what kind of helped revitalize things?
Just like everybody else, it went dormant because, our ceremonies had to be hidden away because they were illegal, and, we were not treated well if we participated, and life was harder.
When the flower dance ceremony came back, it brought the Karuk community closer in ways other ceremonies hadn't before. The young women who participate are eager to take on new responsibilities.
They often talk about what roles they'll have in ceremony. They've already imagined themselves kind of growing into these positions.
Both women hope Long Line of Ladies has a robust film festival life. Karina Dominguez, reporting for ICT.
And those are the headlines for the ICT Newscast. Coming up, we continue our celebration of Women's History Month and entertainment on stage, in the arena, and on the court. But first, the Violence Against Women Act is reauthorized. Stay with us. Indian country is celebrating the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act. One of those lawmakers is Ho-Chunk citizen and U.S. Representative Sharice Davids of Kansas.
Unfortunately, the Violence Against Women Act reauthorization didn't happen in 2019, so the bill lapsed. And I've been working actually since I got into office on trying to make sure that we get that reauthorized. So this has been a long time coming. And this time around, the VAWA changed the way that we respond to domestic violence and sexual assault, and made huge strides in terms of prevention and prosecution support for victims and that sort of thing. And I'm really glad that we were able to come together and finally get the updates that were needed through. And that includes bringing resources and attention to Indian country, and particularly for the crisis that we're in with the MMIW. And so I wanted to make sure that tribes have jurisdiction where, particularly where non-native offenses have happened, and try to bring more resources and justice for families and victims. And so tribal jurisdiction has been restored for certain crimes. Allowing tribes to address issues when there's a non-native offender. And then also, some Alaska Native and Maine tribes were previously not included. And so we took care of that issue. And then also made sure that tribes are able to access things like criminal databases, so that just to make sure that they have every resource available to them as they try to keep their communities safe.
The VAWA legislation is personal for Representative Davids.
There's a mainstream attention being paid to issues that are facing Indian country. And I also just want to say, not just issues, but also some of the amazing resiliency and vibrancy of Native cultures is also being paid attention to more mainstream. But I think that, all of us in Indian country can feel that heartbreak when we know that our communities and families are going through issues, murdered and missing Indigenous women and people, and access to healthcare, access to water. And so it's just been a huge priority for me to make sure that I'm doing everything I can as a federal lawmaker to get those resources and support that the federal government is supposed to be sending to Indian country. And so it does feel very personal, and it feels it's an honor to be able to be an advocate for the Kansas Third and also for Indian country during my time here.
That was Kansas Representative Sharice Davids. With the Violence Against Women Act's reauthorization, where does this leave prosecution for tribal nations? Choctaw citizen Trent Shores is an attorney with Gable Gottwells and a former U.S. attorney. He advises clients regarding Native law and cybersecurity.
We know that Native American women are the most victimized of any demographic in the United States when it comes to domestic violence and really violent crime writ large. So whether you're in Oklahoma or some other part of the United States, the passage of the Violence Against Women Act is huge. It adds resources. It adds new opportunities for governments to engage in prosecution of domestic violence offenders. And really importantly for me, looking from my experience as U.S. attorney and a federal prosecutor, domestic violence calls are some of the most dangerous calls that law enforcement respond to, whether it's tribal law enforcement or state or even local law enforcement. And so what we see in the bill that really caught my attention was expanding the opportunity for tribes to prosecute domestic violence offenders who assault officers during the point in time when they respond to that domestic violence call. That I think is really an asset and certainly something that could be a difference changer when we see that nearly 10% of all officer deaths over the last 12 years happened when they were responding to domestic violence situations.
Oklahoma's Governor Kevin Stitt has been critical of the U.S. Supreme Court McGirt decision.
I'm not sure. It's been talked about a lot by state officials, by tribal officials. And I think what we have to realize that there is historically a path forward here, and that is Oklahomans working together to solve these problems, not waiting on the United States to come in and solve them for us. I mean, certainly this wasn't a decision that the governor of Oklahoma or chiefs of tribes made, right? This is a decision that was given to our state by the Supreme Court, and that everyone is now trying to figure out how to deal with and how to implement. There are good stories that have come from this, and there's tragic stories that have come from this. So it's not a simple issue. I appreciate everyone's efforts to engage on it, and hopefully we'll find at the end of the day a collaborative approach of Oklahomans solving an Oklahoma problem.
The Russian invasion of Ukraine has brought cybersecurity to the forefront.
In the wake of Russia's unlawful invasion of Ukraine, we've seen an uptick in cyber attacks in the United States. It's been on industry. It's also been on governments, whether that's state governments or tribal governments or the federal government. Individuals have to be wary as well because we do business right through e-commerce now. We have passwords and other private information saved online. So the best tip I could give to any individual citizen would be to make sure all of your passwords are up to date. Make sure your computers are updated with all the appropriate security patches. And the most important and simple thing you can do is have multi-factor authentication on all of your accounts. It's a simple step to take to make sure that you're the person that is accessing your account and not someone else. But this is absolutely an issue that we as a country have to be wary of because that is, a new battleground, and we see foreign state actors and enemies of the United States taking advantage of cyber attacks.
That was attorney Trent Shores. The first Native nation to legalize marijuana continues to break ground in the evolving and expanding cannabis industry. Stuart Huntington has more on the Flandreau Santee Sioux Tribe's marijuana venture.
The small South Dakota tribe made history in 2015 by legalizing pot, but federal authorities threatened to shut them down, so tribal leaders opted for a tactical retreat.
We decided to burn the crop, so we called our law enforcement in, had them do an inventory and witness everything and destroyed the crop so we could live to get started another day. And here we are 5-6 years later, and we're able to just fire the grow back up as the state was moving to legalize.
Quickly producing high-quality product.
This is your flour. This would be your top shelf flour, really. This would be what gets grammed up and goes into our ace on the shelf, and then anything that we trim off from around that will be made into oil.
Last summer, after state voters legalized medical marijuana, the tribe launched Native Nations Cannabis on its reservation and opened South Dakota's first and still only medical marijuana dispensary, more than a year before the state finalized its regulatory procedures. There's been a little pushback from some in state law enforcement who thought the tribe was jumping the gun.
The tribe has taken the position that for individuals who are arrested for having products from our facility that will pay for their criminal defense.
But business is booming.
We've grown to approximately 50 employees right now, almost overnight. We can't pump products out fast enough. We don't have the correct grow capacity, which is why we're adding more grow capacity.
The tribe has 2 new growing facilities under construction to provide the raw material for its state-of-the-art processing lab. But the tribe has even greater ambitions. Soon, state-licensed dispensaries will open, and Flandreau eyes serving that market.
We're looking to expand and get on the state side in South Dakota, as well as other jurisdictions. But we purchased a building out in Mitchell, South Dakota, former Shopco building that's a decent setup to get started.
Really, there's no other legal product in the state right now except for what we're doing. So everybody's going after dispensaries, but there's no marijuana.
The small tribal nation is taking a big lead in this nascent industry.
In the Midwest, we're the only operation that's growing, processing, and selling from Denver to Illinois.
And the tribe stands ready to lend a hand to other Native nations.
If anybody's interested in talking, we're very open, we're easy to get a hold of, and we're open to site visits for people to come here, and we're willing to help any way we can.
In Flandreau, South Dakota, this is Stuart Huntington for ICT.
In college, Susan Masten was elected president of the Native American Student Association. It sparked a lifelong career as an advocate for women and tribal rights. She was president of the National Congress of the American Indians and chair and vice chairperson of the Yurok tribe. In 2004, Susan founded the organization We Win, which stands for Women Empowering Women for Indian Nations.
We Win was founded in 2004, as you said, to assist women who are currently in leadership, to uplift and encourage them and to rejuvenate them and to build up their spirits. And so also to prepare young women for leadership roles. We also pay tribute to the women who came before us for their sacrifices and contributions to allow us to enjoy the rights that we have today and for protecting our homelands and our culture, language, and traditions. So we do this based on our cultural and traditional values because those are important to all of us and they are pretty consistent throughout Indian country. And we do this through personal and professional training developments that we do once a year. And so women come together to learn and share and network and build, contacts. Some find jobs, some end up running for council or national positions simply because they attended We Win and were able to see other women role models in leadership positions. And so, and the encouragement and support that we offered while they were there gave them that kind of strength and courage to step forward and serve in a leadership role.
Susan Masten was inspired by generations of strong women.
Because there weren't a lot of leaders in my time, starting my career and throughout my career, who shaped me was my grandmother and my mother. And what they instilled in me when I was very young is that if you work hard, that you can be anyone or anything that you want to be, and you can do anything. And so I never had an attitude where I didn't think I could do something. I just automatically assumed I could do it, whether it was, sheetrocking a wall or, creating an organization or running for president of the National Congress or running for the chair of my tribe. It gave me that strong foundation of good work ethics to work hard. And they were very strong about getting an education and to just go for whatever it was that, I dreamed of. Unfortunately, that's not always what happened. Sometimes you don't get to choose your path, and that happens often in tribal government. That there others choose you, and if you have the gifts and from the Creator that provided to you and people call upon you, then you have an obligation to use those gifts to help your communities the best that you can.
The We Win leader offers encouragement.
I say that prayer is powerful and our people relied on prayer, and that you need to pray every day and remember to include the prayers for yourself so that you can be the best that you can be. And so that there is, all things are possible if you believe, and you need to believe in yourself, because there are many times when you will not have the support of others, and you need to be strong in the foundation of who you are as a Native woman, to know your culture and your traditions, because that is what's going to give you the strength and courage to be able to be successful in your life.
That was Yurok citizen Susan Masten. Now let's go to basketball, where Navajo citizen Shawn Martinez helps provide in-game entertainment for the Phoenix Suns and Mercury.
Welcome to the big show.
Big show indeed. For every home game, Shawn Martinez and his team spend hundreds of hours prepping. As the senior director of live presentation for the Suns and the Mercury, his job is to create a winning atmosphere for the fans and the players.
And we are getting ready to jump into the show here in 10 seconds. We're going to start our video block first. So we'll get that going here. Let's start videos here in 3, 2, 1, go.
Welcome
just like
to the
that.
Footprint Center.
Every t-shirt toss, dance performance, and fan interaction is carefully planned out.
All right, Suns fans, you know what time it is. It is now time for the shoe game cam.
Shawn added the shoe cam contest, which is already quite popular.
I always tell my game production director upstairs, show the fans, because when you show the fans, it keeps them involved.
Are you a big Suns fan?
Huge Suns fan. I love the Suns.
I grew up on the reservation, you know, tribal clothes, all that, commodity food.
He worked for both the Detroit Pistons and the Denver Nuggets before coming to Phoenix.
In my first year, who would have thought I would be able to go to the NBA Finals and the WNBA Finals? And then I just went to All-Star. It's been a crazy 2 years since I've been here.
It's already been quite a journey for Martinez, and he has more goals for the coming seasons.
Yeah, I have not spoken Navajo on headset, but it's coming.
In Phoenix, Patty Thalahunga, ICT News.
The Heard Museum will welcome the best Native dancers to the World Hoop Dance Competition on March 26th and 27th. Scott Sixkiller Sinqua took the crown in 2020.
Well, we were fortunate to grow up going to different celebrations, powwows, ceremonies with our parents. I guess when you're a little kid, you have no choice but to go with your parents wherever they're going. So we're always going to these powwows, and we just grew up dancing, and we found a love for it. And when we were taught how to dance, they told us that we weren't dancing for ourselves, we're dancing for those who can't dance, those who want to dance, and most importantly, all of our ancestors and our veterans that fight for what we have here today, to be able to share our culture and our language and all of our dances and songs. So I think it's very important to share that knowledge with the artists. Hoop dance came from a healing dance a long time ago, and they said that every time the dancer passed his body through a hoop, he was adding another day, month, year onto a sick individual's life. So we still like to use the healing aspect of the hoop dance, and if we can bring a little bit joy to somebody for that split second, I think we're doing okay and helping to heal people.
That was Scott Sixkiller Sinqua. Johann Sutter is a hero in history books, a California pioneer. But there's another side to the story. He exploited, enslaved, and raped Indigenous people to build his empire. The Native American rock opera, Something Inside Is Broken, tells the true story of the natives whose entire way of life was destroyed in the name of progress. The play is written, composed, and directed by Jack Kohler.
Well, this is the very beginnings of the missing and murdered Indigenous women's crisis in California. So it takes place in about 1846. It's a true story. Well, it's based on a bunch of true stories combined together to make one story. But this is based on true stories, and it's about two lovers, one who gets kidnapped from her tribe and forced to be a slave for Sutter, and he used her in many ways, not only as a house servant, but he also next to his house in Sutter's Fort, he had a room where he kept sometimes 10 to 20 young Native girls. and I don't need to go further on explaining what happened there. But so the young man decides the young Native man decides he's going to volunteer to be a servant at Sutter's Fort. He incites a riot after he gets there. A lot of them escape, and he rescues his wife-to-be. But there's tragic consequences because his brother is working for Sutter as well, but in Sutter's army, and Sutter forces the brother to either find his brother or his tribe's going to meet another fate. So without giving away the show, it's a tragic story, but we did it as a rock opera, as a musical, because we could tell the story without being very depressing, because it's a depressing story. You know, all of Native American history, there's a lot of conflict and depressing ends to Native peoples.
Captain Sutter needs more workers and women to work the fields.
I had agreements with the captain. I would supply him with a handful of our young men to work the fields, and that was all.
Demands change.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For more news, visit IndianCountryToday.com. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives. I am Aaliyah Chavez.
Sometimes you got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run.